You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. Here are Brad, Lisa, Brian, Billy, and Darren.
Welcome to another edition of the It Modcast podcast. Joining us is Brian Young, the Turtle Dork.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Also joining us is guest dork, Billy Das, Indie Dork.
Hey, everybody. I'm here now.
Yay!
Yay! And Lisa Gullickson, wife dork.
Hello.
Brad Gullickson, mouth dork.
I've just raided some tombs.
And I'm your host, Darren Smith, the Disco Dork. And welcome to the It Modcast podcast, Fistful Friday.
Yay! It feels like forever since we've been in the Dork Cave.
Yeah, it has been, I think.
It's been 1 week, guys. Don't you remember our week in Dork?
Oh,
We
yeah,
all
that's
love
right.
Wrinkle in Time, especially Brian.
Oh, yes.
Yay!
Best of the year.
But now we have the next Best of the Year movie, Tomb Raider. And in honor of Tomb Raider, we're talking about Lost Weekend 9.
Yay.
That was our own little adventure.
It was.
There were ups and downs.
There were?
Yeah.
Traps.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
There's
yeah.
some traps there.
Yeah.
We
Weird
went
father
down.
storylines.
Yeah, daddy issues.
Well, okay.
Very,
yeah,
a lot
present.
of daddy issues.
Not VF.
Super not VF. We will get into that.
Yikes.
By the time we got to Sunday, our movie, you were never really here.
That's right.
I was so fucking flinchy that I think that Chris Chaka could not enjoy the movie because I was like, every time like somebody bent over, I'm like, it's happening again. I can't take it. Like my nerves are fucking shot. Brad and I actually stayed Sunday to Monday, and like Sunday night, I was just like anxiety, like catatonic, like I don't even want to talk because if I talk, I will weep. It was so vomity. No critique of Andy, and nothing should ever be like, I don't expect the world to be accommodated to me, but when you have a phobia and it just weirdly keeps popping up, and I wanted that fucking crown. Well, it wasn't a crown this year. It was a medal. But I wanted the prize of seeing all the movies. So
And
I'm
you
like,
got it.
And I did. I did, but I don't know.
If you're tuning into this Fistful for the first time, what is Lost Weekend?
Lost Weekend is a film festival hosted by Andy Garrison and Film Club 3.0 at the Alamo Draft House in Winchester, Virginia. And it has a long and wonderful history there. Actually, ItMod's first encounter with the film festival was at the third Lost Weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
It's still my favorite.
It's the best. It's the best. Headed by Andy Garrison. Started it in his home, like in his basement.
Actually, at the time, I think he was running a bookstore, and they would do Lost Weekend from the back
Of the bookstore. Yeah, and then
I love the history behind the name because, like, as a kid, like we could roll around and maybe some kids would go play a soccer game or go play outside, but Andy and kids like us would stay inside watching TV, watching movies, and so when his dad would see that he had spent his whole weekend, watching movies, his dad would say, "Oh, you lost the weekend.
Yeah.
Like you lost your weekend because you were inside the whole time." So that's the history behind.
Yeah, it's
the
pretty
Lost
cool
Weekend
history.
name.
Yeah.
But the best thing about Lost Weekend is the fact that it is programmed. Andy does like bring in other people to help screen, but the final okay always comes down to Andy. And there's like a signature Andy Lost Weekend film, some of which I've included on my list, where it's just like, I wouldn't be watching this movie otherwise. I might not necessarily enjoy it as much as I did because I'm seeing it because of Andy in this context. So I think that's something unique to a super local film festival, and I think that it's something that people who are anywhere in the relative area, or if they have some like a weekend where they can travel, like this is definitely something a film fan should try to make.
It's twice a year. If you have access to a plane ticket, man, or a car or something, you should get out. It's worth it. It's better because the community's smaller, and so it's more of a go and watch movies experience instead of going sort of like people watch celebrities at big festivals or whatever, which is cool too. But I haven't been to Fantastic Fest, so
Ha 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 ha.
so I gotta highlight the local.
We're not excited by celebrities anymore. We don't need that because we've satiated that need.
No, that's cool. I know, and you guys all go to the San Diego Comic Con. You see everybody.
We're
like to
desensitized.
Wood. It's cool. I just hang out here and watch movies.
Now I like to mingle with the little people. Like,
thank
what
you.
are they up to? How do they even think?
Yeah.
You know, and
We do
that's
little
what-
people things.
I don't know. I
Well,
liked
this is-
downsizing.
Yeah,
Taking a
Talking
turn.
about Fantastic Fest, that would be fucking great.
it is.
Everybody who dissents can suck it.
Oh man. Okay, so
Bottle
what-
of vodka so big.
I gotta watch that movie again. I really enjoyed downsizing. Anyway, before I get to some giggle fits about shrunken people, let's run through our Fistful, our top 5. So these are the top 5 films or moments from Lost Weekend 9. There's been 9 Lost Weekends. There's about to be a 10th Lost Weekend.
I wish I could
That's
go
incredible.
back in time and see the first 30.
Right? I always
We'll
have
just
that.
have to get Andy's list of those movies and then we'll just.
Oh
kind
no,
of-
Yeah.
Darren and I were at Lost Weekend 3.
I was not.
I know.
Oh, that's right. Damn. None of it?
No, we only you and me saw
I
Lost
can
Weekend
never
3.
catch
It
up.
was also the great
Oh, wow.
snowstorm.
It was.
You guys
Yeah, we
in
were
on
snowed
it,
in.
too.
Yeah.
What movie did we watch in the hotel on Wednesday before Lost Weekend? Do you remember?
The Fault in Our Stars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aaron and Brad spooning.
And
Oh my
and
God.
also
Watching the John Green movie.
and also that Sarah Palin movie,
Yeah,
right?
Game Change. We watched Fault in Our Stars and Game Change back to back.
Oh my god! To get in the middle of that sandwich.
Yeah, that's what our friendship is based on. That's the kind of history we have. I love it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is our top 5 movies or moments or whatever of Lost Weekend 9. Brian, start us off. Oh, you know what? Let's let the guest start off.
All
Wanna
right.
This
do
is
that?
gonna be confusing
It
because
is.
we're
Wait.
sitting in a circle.
Wait, should we go in a circle? Is this really going to get
Let's,
confusing?
It
no,
is.
let's just do a. Okay.
Yeah, fuck Billy. Brian, number
You
number
can't
5.
see the shoulder shrug and then I was like, what? Okay.
Just kidding. Brian, you're number 5.
So I'm before we got on air, Lisa had an idea as far as like not necessarily doing our top 5, but just having like 5 films that we want to talk about. So I think I'm going to kind of follow in those footsteps,
My footsteps.
your footsteps.
Everybody make a note of whose footsteps he's following in.
So tiny.
So these are not necessarily my top 5, but just films that really kind of stuck with me, which probably should have been my top 5. But regardless, there was a lot of movies, but I know there's going to be some cross talk with some of the films. So I want to start off with one film, which was the foreign language film In the Fade. I really enjoyed this film, and it's a film that has stayed with me, and a film that I've been thinking about a lot since I saw the film. Now, this is a film. Ooh, which country is this from?
Germany.
And it stars Diane Kruger, who a lot of people may know from, most notably from *Inglourious Basterds*.
National treasure, sir.
That's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one.
1 and 2.
Okay. Sorry if Nicolas Cage.
Oh, yeah, there was a sequel to that.
Yeah, they gotta get that desk.
Oh, shit.
Well, Diane Kruger from National Treasure and *Inglourious Basterds*. I thought she was phenomenal in the film. Now, they give you the log line on IMDb. She plays a character, excuse me, named Katja. Katja's life collapses after the death of her husband and son in a bomb attack. After a time of mourning and injustice, Katja seeks revenge. And as you guys know, I've always talked about this. I love that subgenre of revenge films. And this falls in line with a revenge film, but kind of told in a very unique way. This definitely has a 3-act structure, but I think it's kind of broken up into chapters, if I'm not mistaken. And we get the first act where we're kind of introduced to Katja and her marrying her husband in prison. He's in prison, and then there's this bomb attack that's taken that's aimed at her husband, and then of course
And her son. Well, not aimed at her son, but her son is also.
her son is there, and they both are killed. And that moment where she drives up back to his office and she realizes that it was his office that got attacked and that they're dead was just so heart-wrenching, and she just gives a phenomenal performance throughout the course of this film. And then the second act, we really get to see the kind of like the courtroom drama of it, which I really wasn't expecting, but that was compelling as well. You would think that at that point in the film, it would kind of have a bit of a lull. But again, the acting, especially, I think you mentioned this, Brad, when we were talking about this as last weekend, the actor who played the defendant, the lawyer who was
German Shia LaBeouf.
German Shia LaBeouf?
He looks like Germany's answer to Shia LaBeouf.
But
No,
that's
no,
her
no,
lawyer,
the
the
lawyer.
other lawyer.
The lawyer.
Oh, the bad guy lawyer.
Yeah.
Not
Him.
her lawyer.
That was the evilest looking dude.
Yeah,
They could not have
And
found.
he was really, really good. And when you see like a lot of his cross-examination and the way that he would a lot of his cross-examination was like really kind of attacking Katja when she got on the stand. Didn't she go
Well,
on
it
the
was
stand?
all about creating the doubt.
Yeah.
All he had to do was get to a place of, okay, well, you can't say definitively that these people did it,
Yeah.
and that like it's the kind of thing where it's just like, okay, because there's the shadow of a doubt, all of this evidence is thrown out the window. Which, if you watch Boston Legal, it happens all the fucking time.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah. So these neo-Nazis are responsible.
Spoilers, Jesus.
Oh yeah. Well. Yeah. I don't want to give too much away, but
It's in Germany. You got to deal with Nazis,
yeah,
right?
yeah, there you go. Thank you, Brad. But that third act is the one that really kind of stays with me when we get to I won't give any spoilers away, but
Except for the one.
the one oh the,
the Nazi
the
thing.
neo-Nazis, yeah.
It
But
was Nazis.
but how this film ends and the choice that she decides to make, and I won't give anything away, but as far as her seeking revenge, really, really stayed with me. But I think it was fitting for her character to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was just a profound film that just really stayed with me. So In the Fade, definitely seek that out if you have the opportunity to see that film.
I think the ending of the movie I think that's where all the conversation will happen.
Yeah.
Because you really, do you buy into that as a choice that she makes? And I buy into it for a character, like I get it.
Yeah.
But
I buy into the choice. I don't know if I'm satisfied by that choice.
Exactly. Nazi Matt Frewer. It would be who the defendant lawyer is. Neo-Nazi
So
Matt
you mean
Frewer.
not satisfied as far as what?
As far as my own tastes and feelings.
Well, this is the kind of film where the worst things imaginable are happening, which I think is, having been to a couple last weekends, a pretty typical indie movie, for an indie movie track.
Yep.
And for me, the ending was actually kind of surprising, considering generally what would happen is nobody would be satisfied and everything is horrible, which I guess is still kind of true. I don't know, because the first two acts are so tremendously grounded, especially that first act where she's getting all of this criticism from her parents, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
this is not what this episode is
We
about.
could do a whole review cast of In the Fade, and I have serious opinions about it. I liked it. I don't think I liked it as much as Brian liked it. I agree that Diane Kruger's awesome, but like I said, I don't know if I was satisfied with that ending.
Total babe. And she looks so ill the whole movie, but she doesn't vomit free.
Yeah.
So.
Really? I thought...
Oh, maybe not. It's all running together.
I don't think it was Via.
She looks horrible.
No, yeah, but she's drugged out.
Yeah.
She's definitely drugged out.
Yeah.
You know,
But mostly happy drugs.
Well...
Cocaine's not a drug.
I
It wasn't cocaine, it was straight up meth. She was doing meth.
She was doing meth?
Yeah, and
I
meth,
totally
meth
forgot
is
the
not a
meth.
happy drug,
I
Lisa.
totally forgot the meth.
We have to go over the happy and sad drugs one more time.
I forgot my flashcards. I didn't remember.
Crystal meth, I'm not happy with my life choices. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a couple of weeks since last weekend,
Yeah,
so
it
you know.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. Excellent pick, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, Billy.
Okay.
You're number 5.
So I guess I'll follow in Lisa's footsteps as well. I like the idea of 5 movies that we would like to talk about.
Such a queen.
So I'm adding some gravity to that.
Okay.
I've now endorsed it, so it's a thing. I'm gonna say that's on me. So my number 5 movie that I want to talk about was Bombshell, the Hedy Lamarr story.
Nice.
It was one of my most anticipated films for last weekend. Hedy Lamarr, famous actress who you might have heard of. Also was very smart. She was a problem solver, and she liked to sit around and noodle about problems and come up with sort of inventive ways to fix challenges that she saw. And one of the ways in which she did that was she saw torpedoes were sinking boats and were having a hard time finding their targets. And so she sat down and Hedy Lamarr, film star actress, sat down and thought about a solution for how to protect communication from the torpedo and the missile ship that's shooting the torpedo and all that. And basically what she comes up with is the groundwork for Wi-Fi, for Bluetooth technology, for channel hopping radio, basically, for secure communications. And I think that that's a really little known aspect of her, and I think it's kind of important to talk about in the way that we're thinking about Hollywood today, and the way that we treat our celebrities, and especially the way that women celebrities are treated through the course of their careers by the filmmakers that they work around. It goes through her story, her history. It's like 40 years of her history. I think my take on Diana Last Weekend was that I really wanted to see like a 10-part miniseries.
That's the
like
thing,
biopic
right?
of her
Yeah,
story
it's
to go
not
through all of it.
one movie about Hedy Lamarr. There's like 10 movies in her life that you can focus on. Whether it's escaping Nazi Germany,
right?
You know,
she was married to a German arms dealer, and then escaped Nazi Germany with jewels sewn into her coats. Comes to America, woos a filmmaker on the ship to the United States.
Mayer,
fucking Louis B. Mayer, right? Like, and hustles herself a film position, and she gets to the States, and I think that she's a really interesting person to look at in the way that she went through life, because I think because of the way that, like, for example, her invention with the channel hopping worked, is that that's something that the government kind of took control of, and then they sort of sat on, and then the development of that work went on in secret following her involvement with it, so she never really got credit for it. Meanwhile, she gets put into this literal stable of actors who are, kind of forced to do these things, and they go through sort of a lot of background about crystal meth addiction.
Uppers and downers.
Uppers and downers through the course of her life.
Happy and sad drugs.
But I think it's a documentary that people are going to want to take a look at, just for the sheer value of the novelty of her story and the places that she went and took a look at. But it's also very timely. It's timely for a lot of people.
I think that the most beautiful thing about that documentary is all of the found tapes. There was like a journalist who just had tapes and tapes of interviews with Hedy Lamarr that he just had like tucked away, and then he moved a thing, and oh my God, all of this invaluable taped live, her thoughts, her voice, her philosophy on life. Like, she was not bitter. She looked back on her life and really appreciated everything that came to her, about the not getting credit. She was just like, that's how it is sometimes, but I don't know, very cool.
I think that what stands out from that is she was very intelligent about what her surroundings were like, and she played to her strengths, and she, to the extent that she could, manipulated her surroundings to get the best possible deal that she could out of most things, which I just kind of find to be interesting. Susan Sarandon was the executive producer of the movie, and she gave a quote. She was talking about it at a performance recently, and she said something that I, like, irrespective of the podcast and the Last Weekend stuff, I just read the story and I found it very interesting. But she said, while Lamar's intelligence is undoubtable, and then Sarandon remarked, it's certainly not a requirement to be smart in my business. Mediocrity is rewarded time and time again. A lot of the time you're hired because you don't ask questions. It takes more time to ask questions. It takes more time to fight for something with integrity. And in my mind, then, that's the core of what becomes the Hedy Lamarr conundrum, is that she was beautiful, and she was an actress who, that is the career that she pursued, and so she adapted herself to the environment that she was in, and part of the choices that she made, and part of the way that the system abused her willingness to make those choices and exploit the assets that she had available to her, was that her intelligence was overshadowed, and she kind of played into that role to do the things that she could. So I think that's part of why the story is sort of lost.
All right. Good pick.
Also has Diane Kruger in it.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Lisa, your number 5.
My number 5, I'm also following in my footsteps. And my number 5 I included because, to me, it encapsulates what Last Weekend is all about. It is such a Andy movie, and it's a movie I would not have seen otherwise. But it's also the movie that had the biggest turn for me, where I was watching this movie and I'm like, this movie's great. Thanks me for remember watching this, and then something happens, and I'm just like, and I'm out. I don't like this movie anymore. And that movie is Oh Lucy.
Oh.
Starring Shinobu Terajima and Josh Hartnett.
Josh Hartnett.
And the beginning of the movie actually has a lot of parallel themes to Kimiko the Treasure Hunter, which is another Last Weekend film. Was it a Last Weekend film?
Mm-hmm.
But it was Last Weekend 3, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to see it on the big screen. But it was a movie that I fell in love with the idea of. But the movie opens with, it's this lady, she is well into marrying age and yet still unmarried. She's living in this office job that is just unsatisfactory and unfulfilling. And everybody else around her seems to be getting along and not really minding being confined in this way. And she just doesn't quite understand, why she doesn't fit in. And she does little things to purposefully continue to not fit in, which other people just find abrasive. They just don't get her. And then what another parallel theme to Kimiko, this is the last parallel theme, is that she then goes to, Kimiko goes to, they both go to the United States to kind of live out this fantasy. Kimiko, it was finding the treasure from Fargo. And for this character, Lucy, I won't call her Lucy, that's not her character's name. Well, it is and it isn't, whatever. Setsuko, she goes and her treasure is Josh Hartnett. So
I get it.
Yeah, right? He's dreamy, even still, is not working a lot, but we respect him. Brian loves him.
Yeah.
So Brian finds him dreamy. It's fun to know everybody's type. Okay, so what changes the game and gives Setsuko this idea of getting out is her niece is in a little money trouble, and she's paid a whole lot for these English lessons, and she needs the money right away. So she asks her aunt, who she can generally rely on to be kind of a safety net for her. She asks her aunt to buy the lessons from her so that she can have the money. And so she goes, just go, have a trial lesson, see if you like it, and then you can decide if you're going to take the lessons. So she goes, and the teacher is Josh Hartnett, and he's dreamy, but he's also super warm in an environment where she's just not used to this warmth. And he gives her an American name, he gives her a wig that kind of removes her from her regular state of life. He holds her, he speaks casually to her, just, the way, like how Americans are, we're super warm and touchy-feely. And so of course she totally swoons, and she goes okay, I'll totally take these lessons. Well, after that, Josh Hartnett disappears. Where did Josh Hartnett go? So she goes in pursuit of Josh Hartnett. Through the course of this film, it's just kind of this funny little adventure story about this kind of aging woman she's probably my age, but the idea of she's supposed to be married by now. Yeah. Whatever the age is, she's supposed to be married by that point. She's a weirdo for not being.
She's older than you, but yes.
Okay, I hope so. I can't tell. So she decides. So it's kind of funny. There's these little miscommunications that are so cute, but then all of a sudden something happens that is very serious, and I'm just well, that wasn't the movie I was signed up for half of the film, and then after that, it just gets so
you
sad.
Thought you were watching a self-discovery film, with a comedic edge or quirky edge.
Yep.
And no, you are watching a self-discovery film, but it's
no, it's not a comedic edge.
It's not a comedic
edge. It takes a self-destructive spiral, and a super not vomit-free one too.
I wonder, if on rewatch, if you
I would enjoy it
feel
more?
it different now, because what Brad was saying, or like you were saying, when this thing happens, hey, this isn't the movie I signed up for. But going back, knowing at the very beginning what the movie is, so when you see the things leading up to that, one particular incident, I wonder if you receive them differently. And then thus receiving that particular incident differently. And I'm not saying accepting that incident, but maybe having a different type of reaction to it.
I think that, yeah. I like the idea of going into movies unprepared and just kind of taking them as they are. But maybe that I would get something more or something different out of multiple watches.
Yeah.
But at the same time...
You don't want to subject yourself to it.
I don't want to subject myself to that again. To me, like, things are light and funny. You know what I'm talking about. Like the splat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what you think it is, listeners. Maybe when you get to that point, they're like, this is definitely a place where ass splat could happen. But
it's more splash.
You made me cough laugh. Yeah, to me, I don't know. That was like a betrayal of the fun that I was having.
Yeah.
I don't know. The chick got sad. But
Yeah.
I'm so glad that I watched it.
I think that's a tricky part of last weekend because I feel the same way. I want to watch the movies and just sort of go into them very unprepared. I deliberately didn't watch a lot of trailers before this, but
Fountain pens.
Oh boy, they're just really letting you down. But no, I think it's tricky because sometimes you really kind of want that setup because like you're saying, it's a raw experience to go in there and see it. And do you want to go and go through that? You kind of want to know what's coming so you can contextualize it as it comes at you.
Yeah, and also, like, when you're watching movie after movie after movie, especially me, I'm, like, so tremendously, I'm not, like, a superhero or anything, but I'm tremendously empathetic. So, like, I watch a movie, and, like, then, like, my nerves get exposed, and then I just go watch another movie. Like, there were definitely, and I'm sure they'll come up, but there were definitely movies in this where it's just, like, this is generally the type of movie where you would watch it kind of mid-afternoon, and then roll into bed and turn out the lights and just process underneath a comfy comforter and just be sad.
Yeah, I mean, the festival is a different experience.
And with these, especially, like, even, like, Fantastic Fest, not to brag, Billy, like, you get to go out, like, you have, like, an hour, 45 minutes to an hour between films. Last weekend is just, like, wipe the tears and snot off your face because we're going to watch a romantic comedy now. Like, oh my God.
That's the thing. Last weekend, it starts at 9 a.m. now and goes to 2 a.m. the next day. Then you get up at 9 a.m.
I would not have it any other way because it is a unique experience. But it's like the kind of thing where it's just like, like I'm not into like X Games. I'm not even gonna. I'm not gonna ski. You know what I mean? But to me, like the adrenaline rush of like 25 movies is just about as much as this tiny system can take. It's just like I've been sitting down all day and yet I'm covered in sweat. Like I'm not gonna jump from a plane because my nerves can't take it. But like 25 feelings, 25 unique feeling experiences, I'm just like, I'm done. Wrong nerve.
It is why we're recording this 3.5 weeks after.
Has it been that long?
It's been 3. Yeah, well, it's been 3 weeks for us, but the listeners will get it in another week, right? So
that's crazy.
It's been a month, actually.
Yeah. Damn.
We've had a lot of
But you know what? You should have been following our Facebook page because we were giving you up-to-the-minute reviews.
Except for Sunday.
Oh, that's right.
Sunday fail.
Brad, you're number 5.
Number 5. Okay, I'm going to speed this up. Talking about heartwarming and cheery movies. This is my second favorite film of the festival. It's LA 92. You can watch it right now on Netflix, and I would recommend doing that immediately. There's not much to spoil here. You know about the LA riots, right? However, the thing about this documentary is you know what you've seen, in news clippings. You know what you've watched in 60-minute episodes, or Dateline or whatever. I'm sure you've seen the Rodney King beating. I'm sure you've seen the Latasha Harlins shooting. And that's where this film starts. It starts with those two events. And, they are hard to watch, especially when it's like the kickoff, not to be glib, of this 2-hour documentary that is going to take you into the riots in a way that you have never experienced before, because it truly is an immersive film. I was not there in '92. I was on the East Coast. Actually, I was in England at the time, and I thought I knew what it was like in the streets, or I had an idea of what it was like in those homes or in those grocery stores or in those courtrooms. But to be forced in a film festival to endure this event is traumatic, but cathartic, and it's thoughtful, and you just see the way the documentary works is it ties it to the Watts riots. That's how the film actually begins. It begins with footage from the Watts riots, and what Lyndon B. Johnson was saying after those events went down, and then mirroring them with what George H.W. Bush was saying after the events of L.A. Riots, and you just see how nothing really changed from those decades to that decade, and how nothing's really changed from '92 to 2018, and how we're trapped in this cycle of violence. And I talked about a little bit on my Week in Dork last episode about the Forgiven, the Forrest Whitaker, Eric Bana movie about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission after the apartheid, and how South Africa put all their sins out on the table, and how these people, who committed these atrocities, if they were honest and they were truthful about what they did, no matter how horrible, they were judged and sent on their way, and it allowed South Africa theoretically to heal. And that is just such a crazy concept for Americans. This idea of admitting our sins and truly forgiving those sins, that I think it's just something that's why the wound has never healed. We've never really come to terms with what we've done in this country, race-wise, sin-wise, and until we do, we're just going to keep, committing these horrible things. These acts of violence are just going to be on repeat. And I think if you're listening to this podcast right now and you go, well, I have seen the Rodney King beating, I have seen the footage of the riots, I know I don't need to experience LA '92 documentary. Yeah, you do. You really do. You need to, because you need to engage in the conversation, and you need to come out of it thinking, how are we not going to repeat this scenario? And then you need to take that into the voting booth.
All right, good pick. My number 5, for the sake of brevity, it would be LA '92, for all the reasons that Brad mentioned. Yeah, that was if that was just like a standalone showing, like that still would have been a pretty emotional screening. But like having that screening be during a festival where we had so many different, we had a bunch of like down. I don't want to say downers, but we had a bunch of emotional screenings and emotional endings. So like you were just saying earlier, going from one film and having an hour or so to process versus going to these kind of viewings back to back is really something. But yeah, for all the reasons that Brad said, because it was an extremely powerful documentary and a very emotional one with some pretty unsettling footage of our humanity and sometimes lack of. But yeah, number 5, LA '92. Brian, your number 4.
For the sake of time, that was actually my number 4.
All right.
LA '92, for all the reasons that Darren and Brad has said. I'm just going to add just a couple of, like, my experience as far as watching the film. I think it's definitely a powerful documentary that should be experienced by everybody. My biggest takeaway from it was, like you said, Brad, was just that cycle of violence that we kind of go through the justice system and through just our culture in general. When you look at the 65 Watts riots and you listen to Lyndon B. Johnson, and it's basically, like you say, mirroring exactly what happened in '92 with George Bush, and then looking at, Freddie Gray and what's happening within the last couple of years now, it's just like, okay, this is something that's just become a part of our culture that, we think it's healed, and then you just kind of open that wound up again. And it's frustrating to see that. And it was hard for me to watch. And I mean, I kind of give it 3.5 stars, but I think it's a little bit more deserving of that. And I definitely do recommend people to watch it. But when the film opens up and we start with those 65 Watts riots, and we're seeing like this, and when it starts, like you say, it puts you right in the middle of the madness. And my first impressions while watching the film, and this is just my experience, is that we're a week after Black Panther. And, I'm on this high of representation, Black excellence, in front of the camera and behind the camera. And, it just seems like everybody's just on like this cultural high of watching Black Panther. And it's just like, it's like, okay, let's bring you back down, to reality for a bit. And it's just like, when this movie starts, I'm like, wow, we're going back here again. And I don't want that to kind of get in the way of what this movie is, because this movie, I think, is definitely, like you say, is important. But just the time of me seeing this a week after that, I was just like,
I don't want to be in this headspace.
Yeah, I can't. Not a week after seeing Black Panther, but definitely an important watch. Like you say, to see it in this 2-hour block, when in '92, when this stuff happens, we will always get a little bits of information throughout the years. And of course, being so far removed, either like you say in England or me, or be on the East Coast when this stuff happened in '92. I think I was in 8th grade. You hear about it, but you don't see the immediacy of it because you're not there. You're watching on the news, and you've seen like some of the clips of the Rodney King beating, but then watching again on the big screen and seeing those cops take those batons and hitting them across the face. It's just...
And actually, in that scene, really what it is about being in the courtroom after you watch the video and seeing how...
And the people who are defending these cops.
Well, right, and then ultimately how they were let go and how they were deemed innocent. That's the real horrifying footage.
Yeah. So powerful documentary. And again, like you said, it's on Netflix. And I definitely recommend everybody check this out, like you say, to engage in the conversation of that.
One of the times I'm most grateful for from this last weekend, though, was doing the Facebook Live with you and Darren, with Brian and Darren.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck you, Billy.
Was Billy there?
I feel like she was just clarifying to say, no, it's not Billy. But that's fine.
Yeah,
but Brad, her husband.
You weren't there.
No, I wasn't.
But I found that to be a really, like, just to say out loud, like, this is fucking scary, and having that conversation. I just feel really grateful for it.
Yeah. All right, Billy, your number 4.
Okay, so here's what Lost Weekend is like. All of this wonderful, I'm pointing around the room right now, like really soul-searching stuff, revelatory things where, Brian, just beautiful things that you're sharing. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of your candidness about that movie. And then we watched Permission, which is...
I like that movie.
I like that movie so hard. Let me explain why.
I'm on Team Billy now.
Wait, what movie was
Permission?
Permission. All right, so Permission is the one
Rebecca
where...
Hall, Dan Stevens.
I needed that.
Fucking dance.
LA.
Oh my god, that is not what I needed after LA 92.
I couldn't get into Permission because I had just experienced LA 92.
Well, so like the people who are listening to podcasts right now, they're like, oh, fucking LA 92. This is all background noise because their brain is still churning on that.
Sure.
Right? So, but yeah, like you said, though, I was thinking about LA 92 through the course of Permission, which is just a weird, jarring experience. But anyways, I do actually genuinely want to talk about Permission as a movie of note for me. If you want to see it, go see it. I think it's a perfectly fine movie. There's some elements to it that you might find enjoyable, but to be honest...
Steven spitting in the mouth of Gina Gershon.
I was getting to that.
Oh, yeah!
How dare
Permission.
What are your deepest, darkest desires, Dan Stevens? I want to spit right in your mouth right now. And the
I
look
feel
on
like
her
we
face
should
when
be
he
ready
did
for
that.
that after watching that ramen movie last year. What was that movie?
Tampopo.
Yeah.
Tampopo. We should be ready to see things spit into people's mouths.
Holy shit! But no. So the conceit of the movie, though, is it's a couple who've been together forever for their entire life, and they are their only sexual partners. Is the point of the movie. And while out with a casual dinner with her brother and her brother's, I guess, husband, partner.
I don't think they're married.
I don't think they're married. Yeah. Okay. So they're the partner. The partner of the brother casually remarks, "Well, geez, if you really haven't fucked anybody else, maybe you would want to before you get married." And that segues right into like an aborted proposal on the spot because he suddenly has this because of a casual conversation, revelation about sexual partners. Oh, geez. Maybe this is a big deal.
Really thought of that.
Maybe she needs to do that. And they talk each other into making a deal where they fuck other people through the course of their relationship. And it's really twisted and dark and strange and deeply upsetting to me. Like I connect with them. I don't know if you know this about me or not, but I have been in a relationship with my wife since my senior year of high school. So I watch this movie and I see this conversation about people's interest in the number of sexual partners they had, and it just is so profoundly fucking outside of my frame of reference that is the takeaway from that. 20 years of relationship it's not like your success in that is because your sexual compatibility just is rock star every day, all night. It's amazing. I've done everything. That's the point of the movie though, right? Is how many people have you fucked and how many different things have you enjoyed whilst fucking? Or if you're Dan Stevens, it's because you didn't get to spit in the mouth of your lady friend.
Relationship better.
Sure.
No,
it won't.
Yeah.
It won't. It won't.
Exactly.
Nope. Is this going to make us stronger? No, fundamentally it's not. Because they don't know how to exist in a relationship in that way. And if that's the conversations that you're having, then maybe you really should have a conversation about what you want out of your relationship. Which is, look, it's all fine. If you got an open relationship and that's the kind of thing you want to explore in your life, I got no judgment. But my point is, Lost Weekend is exactly going from LA 92, where you're thinking profound thoughts about the experiences of the United States and the covered-up sins that we do not do enough to deal with, straight into something that's supposed to be a romantic comedy that just grates with me personally. And now I'm thinking about that and how angry I am at this, and then Dan Stevens is spitting in her mouth, and it's just what the fuck is happening?
It did make me go, I miss Gina Gershon.
Right though? Yeah.
She's so cute in that movie.
But don't spit in her mouth.
You got to tell somebody you're going to do that.
You're a Disney character, Dan Stevens, now. You can't be doing that.
That's a beastly move. That's a beastly move, though.
The Beast isn't doing that in Emma Watson's mouth.
So fucked up.
I enjoyed Permission.
I did too.
I thought there were fun elements. I also really enjoyed the her brother's parallel plot line of them coming to grips with one of us wants kids, one of us doesn't want kids. I found that interesting. The thing that disappointed me about Permission was I thought that Dan Stevens and Rebecca Hall not ending up together was the easy thing, because open relationships are things that people have, not me and Brad. So nobody come for Brad or me.
Stay away, ladies.
Why are you looking at me, Lisa?
Because I know.
Should be looking at Darren
Brad.
after their Lost Weekend 3 experience.
I know, that's true. For every relationship, there is a loophole, and it is Darren.
Yay!
But, there are open relationships that do work.
Exactly.
And
Sure.
to me, and that
absolutely.
that is something that has not been seen in cinema. If we're talking about inclusion of different types of relationships, then, it would have been fun to see, oh my God, we've opened up a relationship, and now our marriage is going to work, where otherwise it would have been to me that just would have been more interesting.
I would be so on board with a polyamorous movie that is a romantic comedy. 100% I am there for it. The conceit of the movie being I'm not sure I fucked enough people. No.
Yeah, see, I think that's where the destruction of their relationship starts, because like you said, I think open relationship can work, but that's something that you have to be in agreement when you get into that relationship.
Yeah, and I think that but that was something that growing up in this culture, they didn't even really have an opportunity to talk about. Yeah. And so now, let's put the idea of open relationships in the conversation, to going back to Beauty and the Beast, this idea that, you're supposed to fall in love with the prince, and, or you watch, Sleepless in Seattle or whatever, and you're supposed to, fall in love with a person, and then against the odds, and, you're going to have all of this strife in the beginning of your relationship, but if you work really hard, it's going to work. That's not always true for every random two, combinations of people. Like, you do have to go out, try a couple of people, you know what I mean?
Damn.
No, but
Is that what they were doing to me? You
No,
was
this is
trying me out, you
Like,
motherfuckers.
the thing is, you do have to find something, you do have to find something that is easy from the beginning. If you are going through all of this strife in the beginning of your relationship, why not give up on that person, try somebody else? If you're meant to be together, it'll come back around. You know what I mean?
But it wasn't the beginning of their relationship.
But
that
no,
was my problem with
the
it.
thing is, they were compatible, but not all of the way. But because of romantic comedies of past, they're like, this is clearly good enough. Let's settle down.
Sure.
One for life. And that's just, in most cases, not true. And I do know several cases of, high school relationships being together and being happy. And I do, if you're happy.
Valid, Billy.
Thank you for validating.
If you're content, if you are so happy, then stay together. But if there's something in your relationship where it goes, this is not working,
Right.
then break up.
But
just break
that's
up.
my problem
People
with the
should
movie,
break up more.
I agree.
People
I
should
absolutely
break up more
agree.
often.
But that was the problem with the movie, was they were at a stage where they shouldn't go screw around with other people. They should have
just
broken
broken
up
off,
because
Yeah.
clearly they were not satisfying each other in more ways than just sexually.
But they didn't know that.
They didn't know that.
They didn't know that.
Oh my god! I just remembered the scene where they have sex and it doesn't work right for them. Fuck.
Oh.
They're in bed and he's too fast.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
And then there's some
Yeah.
awkward television watching where she's irritated afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, that speaks
Oh.
to their relationship of they just don't have open communication. Like, you just
Right.
have to be.
Yes. No.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You just
exactly.
have to be 100% open, and they did not. They literally did not know that. And I think that a lot of people don't know that.
Well, right.
Yeah, all
You
valid
know?
points. I don't want to watch this fucking movie.
All right.
I'm with you, Brian. It was an enjoyable flick. I thought it was only okay before, but now I'm doubling
I
down.
like it.
All right. Lisa
That's
with the
awesome.
spite love.
Oh shit! It's my turn.
Yeah. You're number 4.
My number 4 is another documentary, and that is the Sammy Davis Jr. "I've Gotta Be Me" documentary. I'm not really a huge fan of that era of music. Like, I am a nostalgia person, but I generally tend more towards the 60s and the 70s. I'm not a huge fan of crooners. But the Sammy Davis Jr. story was so interesting to me because he was such a singular performer, and it's the kind of performer that can't really happen again. Like, there will never be another Sammy Davis Jr. In the idea of, he was born into show business, he was tap dancing on film by the time he was 3. His entire existence was to become this, singer, dancer, icon, actor. And he really didn't have any kind of choice or say in the matter. And, I'm not saying that he did not love that, but then he goes up against, he ends up in a group with Sinatra and, what's the other guy's name?
Dean Martin.
Dean Martin.
Yeah.
And the guy who's the other guy.
And the other guy.
Nobody knows his name.
And they're, in comparison,
Sure.
guys who came to show business as adults, like the regular way, like you become a teenager, you want to be a singer, and you become a singer, you find your vocation, and just up against those guys, he was head and shoulders. His singing was so much better. His dancing was so much more polished.
He was black. He was Jewish. He was later disabled because he had one eye, against all of these impossible odds, he became this tremendous star and an activist and, a guy, like the title says, I've got to be me. I'm going to marry who I want to marry. I'm going to perform the way I want to perform. And then, towards the end of his career, how the crooner era just ends. And he's spent his whole life doing this one thing, and the time for it is done. There's just this kind of sad poetry that I'm probably projecting onto his life.
And the idea that he's 64 years old and he's celebrating his Lifetime Achievement Award for 60 years in show business.
God damn.
And he looks horrible. He looks 1,000 years old.
And I mean, that will never happen again. I think you said during the festival that Sammy Davis Jr.'s talent is the result of child abuse.
Yeah. Positively. Positively.
Yeah.
It's
Accurate.
the same like circus families. You know what I mean? Those were like, you know,
you're right.
where
I
you
see what
see
you're
the like I've seen those documentaries about the little circus kids, and they're like, my little 2-year-old is going to be a gymnast, and they're like stretching their little legs. I'm just like, that's not okay.
Well, and he did not go to school, and he
Yeah.
was clearly uncomfortable with his level of education.
He did not feel literate. He felt as an adult he read at a second grade level, and there were just areas of his life where he was always dealing with this lack of self-confidence and this lack of security because he felt undereducated. So I found it very fascinating. I think that the closest we have is Michael Jackson, where he was born into this showbiz family, and then as a little child, where it's just like you don't have any, like you don't really have any say in what you're going to do, and then you think about all of these kids who do just stay like on the traveling circuit, like he was as a little kid, and just scraping by, singing and dancing and stuff like that. I mean, it's. His story, like his success story, is probably, 100 kids' failure story. The kid who was, taught to dance, and then he ended up in some kind of crazy menial job or whatever. Like, I don't know. It made me think a lot about the history of show business. Same with Hedy Lamarr, where, she was the subject of this crazy amount of abuse so that we could be entertained. It's just kind of interesting.
All right. Brad, your number 4.
All right, Darren, let's see if we can sync up again here. For my
they're
number
cycling
4 is Good Time from the Safdie brothers.
Come on, man.
I just wanted to get to it before. You did. I had seen this film before. It was Was it the opening film? No, it was the second film of Lost Weekend. Yeah. But this was the first time I got to see it on the big screen. And this is the first time I got to see it where I couldn't retreat into my phone or do laundry while watching it. Yeah. I love this film. It is an ugly nightmare of a movie. Yeah. It's Alice in Wonderland if Alice was the worst person on the planet trying to influence her brother as
and magic doesn't exist.
Magic exists, but it's all drugs.
It's all in a
Do
7-Up
not drink
bottle.
that bottle. That bottle says, "Put me down."
Don't eat
It's
me.
not Sprite.
Anyway, it's a rabbit hole movie, right?
Yeah.
So the film starts off, and Rob Pattinson and his brother, played by one of the directors, Benny Safdie, rob a bank. And they're dumb criminals. They're Elmore Leonard criminals. They take the bag, and there's a dye pack inside. It blows up immediately. The cops get on him. The brother can't play it cool, so he bolts immediately and gets arrested. And Pattinson escapes by the skin of his teeth. And the film is about Pattinson trying to rescue his brother from jail because his brother is a little handicapped mentally, and he knows he's going to suffer nothing but pain and misery behind bars, and doesn't recognize the fact that he's probably the source of all his brother's pain and misery. And then it becomes this wild ride of a film where every decision Pattinson makes leads to another terrible cock-up.
Because it's all one day.
It's all one
It's a
day.
24-hour stretch.
Yeah. It's over the course of a night, actually. Yeah. And it's a gorgeous film in the sense of it being absolutely trashy and disgusting to look at, as Lisa shakes her head at me. I mean, it's dirty, it's gross, it's grimy, but it is also attractive in a neon Times Square in the 80s kind of way.
It feels so cinematic to me, especially like with the sound design and the editing and just even the ugliness of it, because it's supposed to, I mean, we were following an ugly character and they're in this ugly part of the city or whatever. So, I mean, that feels applicable. But I just think that coupled with, well, I've talked about this movie like countless times on the podcast.
Yeah,
but
it was on your Dorkies.
Yeah, but just coupled with like Robert Pattinson's performance, the filmmaking. I don't know. It just feels that was the biggest takeaway, and that's what I was going to bring up when I got to it on my point. My pick was that my takeaway watching it this time in the theater again, because I had seen it theatrically the first time, was just how cinematic the storytelling was, and the performances were so good, and the directing has a very assured hand.
Yeah, and for me, you're watching this night spiral out of control, and you're just like, oh, dudes, just stop, just go to jail, just turn yourself in. It's just gonna be so much better for you if you just go straight to jail, or kill yourself. But when you get to the ending, it is surprisingly emotional, and I think it's the only film I've experienced where there is still story happening as the credits are going.
Yeah.
And if you're one of those assholes in the movie, when you see the director's name come up, you go like, I'm going to stop watching, even though clearly more movie is being told. And I'm going to go use the bathroom at this point because the movie's over. This film is not over. You need to watch what is happening and what is being said as the credits are going. And there's a tremendous emotional beat during those end credits.
The way that they put that editing, because the introductory credits go, I want to say like 15 minutes into the movie, before you get the title card for the film, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And people were walking around while this is happening. I was like, fuck, this is fucking art happening. Sit back in your fucking seats.
Yeah. So
I didn't say that. I would never.
You should have.
You should have.
I should have gotten somebody.
Stand up for cinema, Billy.
But I can't.
But Lisa's also right. If this is not your bag, it's going to repulse you so hard.
Here is where I jumped off. When he's in a situation where, as a distraction, he initiates sex with an underage girl.
He's not a good guy, Lisa.
Yeah, and I've heard that, and I've made that argument about other movies where it's just like, he's an anti-villain, or we're watching a movie about bad people. But I was so, on top of everything else being gross, so grossed out by that I'm just like, I'm out. I just found it disgusting. And there's like a puke scene like 10 minutes into the movie that is horrible. I didn't watch it. I covered my eyes. I imagine that it was awful.
You don't see anything.
I don't
It's
think there
greasy.
exists a puke scene that's not that bad if you're Lisa.
It's greasy. They're all horrible. Everybody looks gross and greasy.
That's true.
They are. I mean, genuinely.
And that just, and like the story of this girl then being strung along so much of the night, and then, she ends up getting fucking arrested. Like, it's sad. And she's going to have to go back to that, already downtrodden grandmother. And their lives are now officially, stamp on it, so much worse. It's just a fucking bummer. It was a bummer. I didn't like it.
Horrible choices.
Horrible choices, and that's and
Pattinson is a cancer on the city.
and I know that that's what the movie was about. I just didn't like watching it.
Yeah.
And he's amazing in the movie, but like the bleached ends, it was just repulsive. Everything about it was repulsive. Sorry, I know Darren's number whatever.
No frost tips.
That's my number 4. Brian, your number 3.
Okay, my number 3 is I'm going to go with The Death of Stalin. That was a secret.
That's my number 3.
That's my number 3.
We're doing it's our number 3. This
I'm
going to
pick something different because the circle will be interrupted.
No.
Well,
It's my number 3.
I'll let you guys. I'll let you guys speak a little bit more on it because I'm gonna keep it kind of short because I'm not a great student of history. So
Me neither. I know jack shit about history.
Yeah.
So I majorly checked out.
High fives over anti-history.
Guys, they were Soviets, not actually English.
Okay.
Oh, shit.
So the
This
IMDb
makes a lot more sense now.
Yeah. The IMDb says the story follows the Soviet dictator's last days and depicts the chaos of the regime after his death. So I'm just going to kind of follow that tagline or that synopsis from the film. And I just want to focus more on the comedy of this film, the tone, the physical comedy, and the comedic timing of a lot of the actors. in this film. Steve Buscemi is great in this. Jeffrey Tambor.
Steve Buscemi as Khrushchev.
Yeah. Oh my God, Patty Constantine.
So good.
That scene.
The
he
opening
tries
scene.
to bring everybody back because he needs a recording of that orchestra concert. And then he grabs people like some of the street people in.
That
Hilarious.
was such a great in to this comedy because, like, he's like, like when he's inviting everybody back in, he's like, nobody's going to die. Like
but that could happen.
But
Really.
that joke is like the heart of every single joke because so many people are fucking dying right and left.
Yeah.
Everybody's living in all of this terror, but you have to accept that opening scene.
Yes.
And it could not have been better executed.
And it works, and it really does do a great job of really, like you say, bringing the audience in. Like you said, if you're on board with that scene from the beginning, then I think you'll be on board with this film. And there's so many great like little comedic touches throughout this entire film. The moment when I think Stalin, when not when he dies, but I think when he falls into the coma, and they're trying to put him on the bed, and the one guy gets stuck between him and the bed.
They roll the corpse over him. So good.
And then when his son comes and he runs and tries to take the gun from the other dude, and they're sitting there wrestling, and everybody's standing there watching them
while they've cut open Stalin's brain.
It's just. It has a very, and I'm not the biggest Monty Python fan, but it definitely has a Monty Python feel to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's that British humor thing. And Michael Palin from Python is in it.
Yeah, and I was surprised how much the comedy worked for me. It was hysterical. I thought it was absolutely phenomenal.
I think that the parallel with the Monty Python is Monty Python was so much about like accepting the ridiculous, like the parrot is dead, is the parrot not dead? A ministry of silly wax. But here, like the ridiculousness was the horror that was that place and time.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it actually does stem a lot from the Life of Brian kind of idea, right? Yeah. Here's the insanity of all the shit you believe. Here's the insanity.
I was not allowed to watch that movie as a child, specifically.
Here's the insanity of the history that these people lived through and the terror that they lived through. Yeah. And even though, we're laughing our asses off, all those sequences, including that re-recording of the opera, is a fact. That happened.
That's wild.
That's why it is not my number 3.
Hold on, I have more to say about it before we roll right. Okay, yeah.
Billy, you go.
You go, bro.
There's a scene that I want to call out that I think highlights all of those things is that all of his cabinet and Stalin's closest advisors are around a dinner table, and it gets rowdy, and everybody's drunk, and they get stuck there watching a fucking Western movie or something into the wee hours of the morning.
John
right?
Ford, man, yeah.
And so they're all cutting up on each other, and they're all ruthless in the way that they try and do their one-upsmanship, and you can really appreciate this sort of cabal of thugs sitting around a table being ruthless to each other and making jokes of all the horrible shit that they do. But so Khrushchev, at the end of the night, goes home, and he tells his wife everything that he said that was a joke or a remark or that Stalin said, and she writes it all down, and he provides the background and the context of the joke, and he also provides notes as to which jokes landed and which jokes did not, because you want to make sure you get that right with Stalin, because he can just fucking kill you. And then so in the morning, when they get up, she goes through their daily ritual, which is read back the notes of the drunken comedic review that you gave from your evening with Stalin. And I don't know that part is particularly real or not real, but I can see just as human beings trying to survive and being equally moralless in their pursuit of power, that might be a strategy that they put together, which is literally like, I need to record everything that I say, and I need to find out what hits, and then I'm going to double down on what hits for the next night.
Because when they're all partying and watching those Westerns, one of their friends is on the kill list.
Yes!
And would have been killed if Stalin didn't die.
Right, and they all say goodbye to him, having, he's gonna... He's
on the
sorry.
list. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's really fucking...
There is one more point I wanted to make. I know you guys said it's your number 3, but going to what you just said, Darren, like you say, that it's not on your list, because we had a conversation about this when we got back to our room later that night, and I asked, because watching the film, like, I thought it was hysterical, but even while I was watching it, I had this thought in my head to, like, this is when this happened in 1953. Of course, this was just a horrific thing that happened in the Soviet Union or whatnot. Wherever I'm not serious history. But
you got it.
Okay,
All right,
good,
all
good.
right
I'm
so
good.
far.
I'm
Not
good.
England.
Okay. I get an A. Thank you. But I'm thinking to myself, like, could we make like a parody or a satire like this 50 years from now?
Haven't you
about
seen
now?
Uwe Boll's Postal?
Well, no, I haven't. But could
Great
we,
9/11 comedy,
but
guys.
could we do a film like this about
American
say,
atrocities?
about Trump and Putin, or
Oh, God.
about
So
something like that?
I
50
think
years from
I
now.
think you could easily do a Trump Putin version of this.
I agree.
Now, could you do an LA 92?
No,
version of this?
nothing like that.
No.
But we do have Django Unchained, I guess.
That's what I'm saying. So I don't know if once we're removed from these horrific events in our
That's different.
in our history,
Super different.
I'm thinking something even more so like with God, I can't remember
How about
the terrorist.
Osama bin Laden?
Osama
That's
bin
exactly what I'm
Laden.
thinking.
Yeah.
Could
Osama
you make
bin
one
Laden.
with Osama bin
Yeah,
Laden?
could
It's
you
called
make-
Postal, guys. Have you not seen it?
That movie is nuts. It does not have,
It does. It's no Death of Stalin.
But I just don't know if we could do a Death of Stalin type of film about, say, Osama bin Laden 50 years from now. Like,
I don't know.
Like,
I do
Some
think
kind
you
of
could
hilarious
do.
Hitler
Well,
movie.
I mean, we've done George W. Bush, right? We've done O. Bush on the Comedy Central. You know, like
Holy shit. Yeah.
like it's-
That's my bush.
yeah, that's my Bush. I think given the right talent, yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
But I don't know if every subject,
Yeah.
Postal being a prime example.
Well, I mean, even right now, could you go out and do this with Hitler and his cabal? I mean,
think
at the
you
same
could.
time
Yes,
period.
I think you
but-
could.
Do you?
I think so.
Maybe.
I think that
I
you
think-
have to
I
have
don't
an
think so. I think because people are more
extraordinary
familiar
level
with
of
it.
talent.
I'm going to show you that we
True.
can. Bill.
Very
That's
true.
my next
Yeah.
movie.
It's
Let's
like,
make it.
well, it goes back to the stand-up comedian argument of, is there a good rape joke? Of course there's a good rape joke. Are you good enough to tell it? Odds are you're not, so don't try.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry.
So yeah,
That's my number 3.
I take back all the points I just made.
All right, Billy, you're number 3.
No, I take Death of Stalin as my number 3.
Oh, okay.
All right,
think
I'll
I've
try
said my
again.
piece.
Lisa, you're number 3.
My number 3. So the point about Death of Stalin I wanted to make, because this was actually the secret screening at Fantastic Fest.
and also the secret screening at last
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah, and the secret screening at last weekend.
Well, sort of secret screen.
Damn it, Andy! Why you spoil?
But that was so cute.
Dear.
You had to be there, guys. But when I saw it at Fantastic Fest, I was super tired. And so I was falling asleep and waking up during this movie. And that is not the way to watch this movie. Because watching it that way, it's very disturbing and creepy. Because of that, like, you have to kind of wade into the darkness and humor of it. And it definitely did turn some people off. Some people at last weekend and Fantastic Fest did not like this movie. And,
The film builds to a really horrific murder.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But to me, my argument to that is comedy is used to break tension. And you don't get more tense than a really heinous and horrendous murder. So it's just this level of craftsmanship that goes into creating this film. You really have to be in the headspace for it, I think. And you do have to take that kind of leap of faith of this is ridiculousness. We all agree that this is ridiculousness, as heinous as it is. So let's try and laugh at it, and let's not let it happen again.
Yeah.
I think the poster quote should have been Stalin's got jokes.
Stalin's got jokes. And it's also my number 3, Darren, before
right.
we get to you.
All right.
The only thing I want to say that we haven't mentioned is Jason Isaacs as the
General Zhukov.
Yes, General Zhukov, the leader of the Red Army. Yeah, I wish this was a visual medium, Billy, because you perfectly reenacted Isaacs' slow-mo ability to take off his jacket with all his medals perfectly. Thank you for that.
You appreciate it.
I did. Watching Isaacs in this and having watched a whole season of him as Captain Lorca in Star Trek Discovery, just reminds me what a tremendous talent that dude is, and I
Yeah.
need to see him in more
He's fucking great.
stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. My number 3 is Woodpeckers.
Hey.
I just thought that this was an interesting story. For me personally, just a type of story that I am not familiar with. I don't think it's one that I've seen often. It takes place in a prison, and without giving anything away of the story, it just involves a huge part of this film is communication, and there's an element in the film regarding a particular made-up language, sign language, between inmates at these two adjacent correctional facilities.
Right.
And I just found that extremely fascinating. We get surprised when we see movies like In the Fade, where there's a courthouse drama section of the film, and you think, oh man, it's gonna be a drag, because you don't think you can find interest in a courtroom drama, but you do in that. And in this one, there's no verbal dialogue. There's communication with this sign language that between these inmates in this prison. And with that, I mean, you could easily, not done right, you could not find interest in that. But for me, I found it fascinating, captivating, and then I just thought like the setting and the uniqueness of it was compelling for me. And that's one of the things that myself and everyone here, we always champion about going to these film festivals, is when you go into a film festival and you don't know anything, but then you come upon a film that for you personally speaks to you and is wholly unique. It's a nice surprise, because going into it, there have been no way I could have predicted and said, I want to see a film about, some people in a prison and they communicate with a made-up sign language. Like, I would have never.
That's a movie you're not going to go watch either.
Yeah.
You're not going to watch that trailer when you're at the Angelica and go, oh yeah, I gotta check out Woodpeckers.
Right.
You need to be fed that film.
But I enjoyed it for its originality. And again, if there are other films out there like this, if you've seen them, like, let me know what they are, because I've never seen this particular story told in this particular way and with these particular elements, and that is something I greatly appreciated about Woodpeckers. So that's my number 3. Brian, your number 2.
So number 2 for me was my second favorite film of the festival, and this was I just had a great time watching this film. Bad Genius.
Yeah.
I know Darren was talking to me about this, because I think you and Lisa saw this at Fantastic Fest, because I don't think you saw it at Fantastic Fest. This was your first viewing.
Correct.
Of it.
I also did not see it at Fantastic Fest.
We know that, Billy. You were not there.
Shit, no, you Billy.
So yeah, this
That was
movie.
me throwing shade. I'm not
And-
very
That's
good
okay,
at
it's
it.
fair.
Me and Darren have had conversations about this a lot last year, because you were trying to get me to watch this last year, because you was like, dude, if you watch this, it'll probably be like one of your top movies of the year. And I think it probably would have been maybe my top 20, 25 if I would have saw this, because I thought this movie was riveting. I mean, it's kind of hard to say you're rooting for people to cheat on a test, but I love the way that they are able to take the high school setting and really create this kind of heist this heist tone to it. And the way they're able to shoot the test taking, when you get that first test where she's writing the answers on the eraser and she moves the shoe, and then like the other test that
You
they
can
have
hear
to take.
the Mission Impossible theme song.
Yeah, and the way that it's shot with the slow motion and the camera angles and the macro photography of the pencils and the paper, and the way they're just able
editing.
to the editing, the music, the way they're able to build the tension. Like, those classroom test taking scenes are like action sequences. Like, it's just brilliantly crafted the way this movie is done. I absolutely loved it. And then when we get to the actual plot, the actual third act, where you have Lynn and Bank, who are going to basically, I don't know if I want to give everything away, but they have to take a test called the STIC, which is basically like the SATs. So they come up with this great idea of taking the test in Australia and getting the answers so they could take it like 3 or 4 hours ahead of time, get all the answers and get it back to Thailand so that everybody else can take the test, and then they'll make some type of profit off of that. And I thought that was just that in itself is brilliant. There's so much more that goes into that scheme to try to make this plan work. And the plan kind of gets foiled to a degree, but that whole third act, the tension in that where they have the cell phones in the bathroom
on the breaks,
and then when they go on the break, it is so good. This movie, it really.
I knew
it
you would love it.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
I thought it was
It
great.
gave me test-taking anxiety watching it. Like, I thought I was in the test. Stressing out about it.
What about you, Brad? This was your first time seeing it, right? You didn't like Bad Jesus?
Oh, no.
It was okay.
It was just okay.
Yeah, I kind of got that vibe.
I think Lisa and you had really built it up. So shame on you. But,
Oh, Jesus.
Brian and I saw the same movie.
I don't know. I enjoyed it. I just didn't love it. I didn't love it.
What about you, Lisa, for your rewatch?
My rewatch, I thought that it would be easier, because you were watching it with me, the first time I watched it, and it's super vomity. There's, one kid whose, superpower is vomiting.
That's right.
And, so the first time...
This also might have affected my enjoyment of the film.
The first time I watched it, I was so invested in the story. I wanted to see how it went through, and I think that buoyed me. And then watching this... the second time, I thought, well, I kind of know in general where the scenes are going to happen. And so, I will have an easier time watching it. And that just turned out not to be true.
Did you leave?
Yeah, I left.
That's how engrossed in the film I was, because I don't even remember.
You didn't leave for long.
I didn't leave. I just
you
left
for the test sequence.
I left for the test sequence because I didn't know exactly when it happened. But especially when I watched.
You compare vomit scenes. All right, good time versus this.
Yeah.
This
is
way
worse. Because the first time through, I did catch a little bit of it, and it was horrible. Yeah. But especially after kind of being on edge through a bunch of other vomity movies, I just couldn't take it, and that actually disappointed me a lot. It made me sad that I had to leave, but I still super love that movie. Yeah. Just that bank character, he can. And it's so, there's a lot of other scenes leading up to the scene that I forgot, little scenes where you don't see it but you hear it, and makes me fucking freaks me out. I just don't like it. I just talking about it. I can feel
all right, so stop
talking about it. My skin is crawling.
Did you enjoy it, Billy?
I did. I liked it a lot.
This is your first time seeing it.
Yeah, it was my first time seeing it. I totally bought into it. I love the thrill ride for it. I think it didn't. It wasn't perfect for me, but you should go and see the movie. It's really good.
I believe it's available on iTunes right now.
It's now. You can get it now.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique film. You don't see. I mean, you see heist films, but not like this.
That's right. That's what it's a heist film in a a high school test taking environment, but you give a shit the whole time. Yeah. I don't think I've ever been more stressed in a heist film. Yeah. Are they gonna make it? I don't know. Fuck, that guy's coming.
No violence involved to anyone. No, but
a little bit of violence.
Oh yeah.
A little bit of violence.
Oh yeah. I don't mean they're in the heist, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. No, there's no armed robberies and car chases and shit.
But I'm actually working on a review for this for After Movie Diner.
Yeah.
So I've been doing a little bit of research into the director, and you can totally see his influences. He's a huge Tarantino fan, but also a huge fan of the 70s. 80s heist films. So a lot of that same cinematic language is pulled, the saying, having text on the screen and the way everything is cut. And I think that goes a long way. It's just kind of funny to see those kind of tropes pop up in this kind of random film. It's a real the genre mash in the best way.
Yeah.
Is he first time director?
No. He actually his first film was on the docket for being nominated for best foreign film a couple of Oscars back, but it didn't quite make the cut that year. So he's a well-known, Thai director.
All right.
His name is Natawut Poonpiriya. And the main star's name is like 2 inches long.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the longest name I've ever seen on
All right.
IMDb.
So IMDb it, ladies and gentlemen.
But she's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like that's
and she's
another
a great actor too.
She's a great actor, but like to me it's just like, you know, she's playing like this nerdy character. I'm like, I can totally tell you're a supermodel. You stop it.
You could tell.
You can tell.
Man,
Come
it didn't
Put her into some kind of high fashion.
with Hedy Lamarr, didn't she teach you anything? Can she be like gorgeous and
Exactly.
super genius
No.
magic?
No, I still don't buy it. Heather Lamar was
Saw
the
it,
one
watched,
and only.
disagreed.
All right, Billy, what's your number 2?
I was like, I guess Hetty's not that pretty.
Wow.
I'm just joking.
I have no response.
I'm just saying she's not gonna have such a hard time. Throw some diamonds in that jumper.
Billy, you're number 2.
I wasn't sure which direction I want to go for the number 2. I kind of want to. I agree very much with what you were saying earlier. You know, Lost Weekend is an experience where you get kind of these movies put in front of you, and it's not something that you would necessarily buy into and take a look at. And so, in the spirit of movies that I think are interesting and worth talking about, but are not necessarily my favorite movies of the festival, my lowest ranked movie of this festival, even below Permission, which I clearly did not care for, was November.
Check this out. I saw that same movie that you saw, but I was high.
You had a better time than I
Yeah.
That movie scarred me.
I kind of actually then want to know what your take was on it, because the setup for the movie basically is just
Yeah,
to be
what
clear,
is the setup, Billy? Explain.
So here's the
November.
setup for the movie: is the opening credits of this black and white Estonian film feature flying. What's the Reaper
Gardening
thing?
tools, a
Yeah,
scythe.
gardening tools size.
Hose.
Flying, right? Yeah,
Flying
actually flying hose and size.
Hose and sides.
With a deer skull for a head.
Yeah.
On the prowl for a cow.
Flying. It's flying.
It's flying.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
flying. And it sees a cow.
And it's
swoops
talking
down.
also.
Oh, yeah, it's saying some shit. It's
yeah,
saying some shit while
some
it's doing
Estonian
it.
shit.
It's happening. And it swoops down and it gets this fucking cow and it picks it up and it flies the cow
It
back
helicopters
to
it
another
away.
place.
Within 5 minutes, you're watching a inanimate thing helicopter a cow away.
Right, it's an airlift. It's an airlift of a cow by gardening tools.
Yeah.
And it takes that cow to a farm, and
Film does not get better.
And then
That's
that's
the
it.
highlight.
That's the highlight of it, because the rest of the movie is a relationship drama about a
Don't
couple
give a
that
shit.
would be or something, and then there's some lords who come into the thing who are rich.
It's like a Romeo and Juliet cast system.
I don't know.
Blah,
Is that
blah,
what
blah.
that was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
but it's full of I guess Estonian
folklore,
culture and
yeah.
folklore, and there are deals with the devils at the crossroads, selling of souls
Witches.
to get spirits to do this, witches, the Day of the Dead, basically the deceased family members come back, fucked up farm living where
Cuddle
nobody
puddles.
has any money. What the fuck, Cuddle Puddles? Yeah, that was right in the middle of that movie that happened. I don't know why that happened. So I guess okay. So
They
that's
were
the
so
movie.
relieved.
Right. But the thing for me is never in a
That the
million
goat
years.
didn't choose them.
Because they had 2 asses. Right? That was
Yes.
the logic.
Yeah. Yes.
Put your pants on your head and lay down on the ground and you'll have 2 asses. and
Don't listen to the
goat won't
plague.
know.
Wasn't it a pig? Wasn't it a
No,
plague?
No,
it was a goat. And I thought that it was going to be the black Phillip goat, but it was the white Phillip goat. That's a whole other thing.
Alternate
You know, the
universe.
movie wasn't great, but I've been sleeping with my pants on my head ever since.
No plague, so that's going well. Good,
Yeah.
good. I'm glad to know that that's working.
I'm not superstitious, but I do put my pants on my head. 2 asses.
Here's the thing. This movie would have been awesome if it was 10 minutes long.
Short.
Yeah.
November the short.
Yeah, November the Short, I would have loved the hell out of that. And then I'd probably been like, give me more, give me a movie. But then I get that movie.
No,
and I'm
and
like,
then you'd
no.
regret that immediately. But it was just I would never in a million years I think have found this and stumbled on it. It's an interesting experience. Darren, I fucking gotta know. What did you make of the movie?
The same thing that y'all made it a movie.
It was just more enjoyable while you were doing it.
I didn't say it was enjoyable. It was just nuts. Like that shit was nuts. The freaking And when he's saying a flying scythe, it's not just like a one scythe. This is flying through the air on a string. There's like 3 of them, and they make like this helicopter.
But it is
blade,
helicopter sounds.
But there's a freaking cattle skull or some shit in the middle of
Yeah.
it. It looks dope as fuck. What is it doing in this movie?
Well, that's
Well,
the
why
thing.
isn't that the movie?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's a mythological thing. It's called a krat.
Yep.
It's where you put a soul into inanimate objects, and it's a creature that does your bidding. I would watch the hell out of that film.
Yeah.
Makes you look at the snowman and Frozen differently.
Yeah, the
Olaf's a
snowman.
crat. Olaf's not as cool a crat as this freaking tri-scythe thing.
Yeah, and it's
But
Well,
more
these crats are
cool
mouthy.
than the poetry spewing snowman in this film.
yeah.
Oh, there's a poetry spewing snowman.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
fuck, yes,
that's
you're
the end.
right.
Yeah, and that's super lame.
Yeah.
That krat is lame. I don't
Yeah.
like that krat.
No,
That crat,
it has no blades.
No,
Wait, did it? No, they
No.
didn't.
no,
It
no
It was
blades.
Frosty the Snowman
That's
as
right.
a crat.
Oh,
Yeah.
And as he melted, he bled. It was confusing.
That's right. That movie
Black
was nuts.
ooze. It was weird. I mean,
It could have been Black Ooze. It was a black and white film.
oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. Could have been raspberries.
Viewers, do double feature this with a field in England, and then hit me
Dude,
back.
don't fucking.
Just made him so mad.
Field in England is so great, Darren.
I didn't say it wasn't. Hold
Yeah,
up.
you can't put it next to November. November
Hold
is
on,
straight
hold on.
garbage next to Field in England.
Wow. Hold up. Both of those movies are nuts.
Yes,
Both of those movies are insane.
yes, but
Okay, that's the only criteria, and they're both black and white,
all right.
That's
then
true.
and they're
watch
both in a
Solo
foreign
with
country.
it, too.
Wow. Brad, do you realize you bring that movie up like once every 3 months?
Well, because if you watch Solo, it's with you forever.
That's true. Okay, yeah, November. That movie was nuts.
It's a movie that happened.
Lisa,
Yes.
you're number 2.
My number 2, it was part of Lost Weekend for us, though it was also like the weekend that it premiered everywhere. But we wouldn't get a chance to talk about this film otherwise, and that
Lisa,
is
it's
Annihilation.
My number 2 as
Yay!
well.
I'm so glad. So, everybody's seen the trailer. The trailer was stunning.
Yeah, everyone saw the trailer. No one went and watched the movie.
Is that true?
Really? It
That
did
makes
not-
me so
Did not do
sad.
great at the box
I
office.
thought it did pretty decent.
I don't think so.
40 million or something like that all in so far.
Is that much?
He had a similar turnout for Ex Machina, right?
Yeah, probably.
I think I bet you Ex
We
Machina.
just had a bigger.
Well,
budget,
Lisa,
had a
you
bigger
talk,
budget.
and I'll check out Box Office Mojo.
Well, it's Alex Garland's follow-up film to Ex Machina, and Ex Machina was a huge hit in the ItMod crew. We
fucking
all loved this movie, and so we were all super anticipating Annihilation. And it stars Natalie Portman and Jennifer Jason Leigh, Tessa Thompson. I was so excited for this all-woman team. A scientific team going into this mysterious anomaly and doing some serious science.
Also, Gina Rodriguez.
Oh, also Gina Rodriguez. They only listed those 3 names on the top of IMDb, and I can't scroll and talk at the same time. That's my particular talent. Also, Oscar Isaac looking frozen and beautiful.
It's Oscar Isaac.
And so, coming away from this film, some of the other people who were... I loved it, just to put that on the table. I really enjoyed this film. A couple of people had issues with the lack of character development that was happening in this film. A lot of the female characters are extremely flat. There was like... But I was kind of cool with it. And here's why.
I would say there maybe 3 of them are one-dimensional. I don't know if I'd necessarily call them flat.
But isn't one-dimensional and flat the same
hang on.
thing?
No, it's not. No.
One dimensional is less than flat.
Listeners, it's funnier when you see like Lisa do the hand gesture of like a
No.
flat object.
Flat objects.
Flat also implies
That they only have one dimension?
uninteresting. To me, I hear flat. I think also uninteresting. I think they remain interesting without having a lot of dimensions. Fuck you all.
they
That was well defended. I
Without
like
having a lot of dimensions.
Fuck off.
I think that we would not have noticed how one-dimensional these characters were
Thank you, Lisa.
it wasn't pointed out later that it was a plot point that all of these women had something super interesting about them that we weren't necessarily going to find out before some kind of crazy thing came out and popped out and murdered them or whatever. But to me, I was so immersed in the science fiction aspect of this, without giving away the plot and giving away exactly what the anomaly is. It's something for a person who I wouldn't be like the deepest of science fiction fans, but I've seen a fair number of science fiction movies over a swath of time, right? And these are concepts I've never heard of before in film. Like just the way that they twist the different ideas and approach aspects of science that are very current made it just really interesting. And then on a visual level, stuff we've never seen before. Like the end of that movie was like so twisted, mind-blowing. It's just the concept behind what created that visual. It was just fascinating. Yeah. And I thought that Natalie Portman was amazing. Yeah. Maybe if the movie was just about Natalie Portman, but I loved the scene, like Tessa Thompson's final scene. I thought it was stunning. I just thought it was so beautiful.
Here's the thing. It was just, for me, in all honesty, it was just refreshing to have that all-female cast. I mean, with the exception of Oscar Isaac and maybe B.D. Wong.
Not B.D. Wong.
Benedict Wong.
Benedict Wong. Yeah, it was just refreshing to have that large female cast.
Yeah, and the argument can be made because we're going to be, like representation is wonderful. It also has to be good. And I would argue that Annihilation is
good.
Is really, really good.
Yeah.
It would have been more like if the characters were more dimensional. That would be wonderful. Or if it was just Natalie Portman and we had a really interesting Natalie Portman character.
I think you love Tessa Thompson, right?
I do.
So you want Tessa Thompson's character to kick ass, and that's not her purpose here.
This is a role that we really haven't seen Tessa Thompson in, though,
and
I liked seeing her in a different light.
For me, one, is the film as good as Ex Machina? I don't think so. No. But it is such a feast cinematically. As Darren was talking about with Good Time, I think this is the other film of last weekend that felt the most cinematic. They're both beautiful, Lisa. We discussed this already.
Good Time is
one is ugly, beautiful, and the other is beautiful, beautiful.
And it's all about tone and pacing and yes, the final idea, there's a lot of conversation to come out of that. But I also had a connection to this film visually the way I do to 2001. With how 2001 expresses its philosophy visually, Annihilation also attempts to visualize its ideas, if not in an exact same way, but in a similar fashion. And I seriously appreciated that. And when you get to the end of this movie, I'm not crying for a sequel, although I am curious to read the 2 follow-up books. I felt like this was a one-and-done movie, and I'm sure it will be, because I have now looked up on Box Office Mojo. It made $26 million domestically. There is no number listed on Box Office Mojo for its foreign grosses.
Well, I mean, it's they sold the international rights to Netflix.
Okay. So there you go. So its production budget was $40 million. I'm sure, hopefully, with that Netflix deal, they'll make their money.
Netflix doesn't give a fuck. They give them $40 million.
They have $8 billion to spend in 2018.
They do not care. They give us $40 million. They said, here's 50. I don't give a shit.
Anyway, I think Annihilation is certainly worth your time, and it's a movie like 2001, like Ex Machina. If you can sit with it in a theater, do that. I'm happy it's going to be on Netflix, but if you're going to watch it on Netflix,
sit really close
shut
to
all
your
the
TV.
lights off, pull up the chair, and start drinking.
I like what this looks like sitting next to Arrival, so close to Arrival. Very strong entries into science fiction with
not as good as Arrival.
Not as good.
I'm not saying it's as good as Arrival, but compared to other movies, compared to other especially recent science fiction, I think it's a really strong film. Especially again, to show that female-led movies can be of high quality and can.
But in this case, don't make a lot of money.
But I mean, but sometimes the more important thing, not necessarily is how much money it makes, but how it's received. I think, and especially in a conversation that comes later down the line.
It's a film that people are going to come back to over and over again. This will be around for 50 years. We'll be talking about it.
I'm gonna watch it again for sure.
Because we have Blade Runner. Blade Runner, when it initially came out, was not something that did well, but it's still a part
Right,
of the
and they're like, let's do a sequel. It's going to do gangbusters. Oh.
But then that conversation for that movie will happen later on. So hopefully the Annihilation is the same way, because it, like Lisa said, there are some concepts that cinematically we don't get explored very often, if at all.
It makes me excited for more. It makes me excited for more science fiction.
Yeah.
The idea of going, well, let's take the concept of string theory. Well, how can we apply that to whatever? Okay, and then how would we represent that visually? Like, I would just love there just to be like a checklist of scientific, concepts, and just check them through and really try to tell a story in a completely new way. Mm-hmm. I just love it.
Yep. All right.
What was that squinch?
He hates string theory.
Oh, no. String theory is just garbage. No, that's not it. Now, my frustration with following what you were saying, it is great to see women-led movies and science fiction movies breaking ground. But as much as I love Alex Garland, and I am a huge fan of Ex Machina for precisely the message that movie brings through it, but why is Alex Garland directing that? Why is Denis Villeneuve directing Arrival? Why are not women directors being tapped for these roles? And in terms of representation and what you're putting behind the camera, it matters as much, and it bums me out. It's such a weird fucking complicated reaction to seeing something like Annihilation come out and Alex Garland is doing it, and I fucking love that they had all of the women going through that story, and that movie's great, and I need more time to sit with it and understand it, but then I also am
but don't worry, Billy. Jon Favreau's going to do the Star Wars franchise on TV.
No, well, you know what? Regardless of its critical acclaim or whatever, I think the fact that, and you can go back and listen to our episode where we talk about the film, but the fact that we have Ava DuVernay directing something like A Wrinkle in Time, I think is a step in the right direction to begin.
And don't you want to see another movie from Alex Garland? It's not like Alex Garland, you're a dude, you got to make your movie, now sit down. You don't get to make another movie, or if you make another movie, it's got to have dudes in it, because if it has women in it, then a woman has to direct it. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, I agree.
Alex Garland used to do Dread. Yeah.
Apparently, he did do Dread.
Yeah,
that's why he needs to do Dread. But yeah, I agree, Billy. It would be good when we get to that point where Ava DuVernay directed Annihilation.
Steps, I get
but hopefully we're making baby steps.
I think we are.
Now your number 2
was Annihilation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I like that dude point of view, Billy.
My number 2 is just so happens to be the ItMod sponsored film You Were Never Really Here.
I was so squicked out by all the vomit that I could barely watch this movie. I look forward to watching this movie when I'm not having a nervous breakdown.
I'd be interested in your thoughts. You really dug this film, right, B?
Yeah, maybe I'll talk about it later, Darren.
Oh, yay! Out of our, and really, not specifically, it's not my pick specifically just because I really enjoyed the movie, but it's my pick because regarding Lost Weekends period, it's become a tradition now where ItMod is one of the sponsors of Lost Weekend, and we are fortunate enough to have someone like Andy allow us to sponsor a film and introduce the film. And so this being my number 2 is that pick because of the Lost Weekend films that we sponsored. This one I think is my favorite. Joaquin Phoenix is I don't know, man. I gotta be honest. I sleep on that dude so much. He's a guy that I don't think about when I'm not watching him, but when I'm watching him, I'm loving what he's doing. I don't bring him up a lot in discussions about movies and stuff. But when I sit down and watch Inherent Vice, I dig the shit out of that movie. I dig him in that movie. When I sit down and watch, You Were Never Really Here, I'm like, man, this is the same dude who was in that that fake documentary, I Am Still Here. But and I made a joke about that in our
Your
intro.
introduction was so great. I think
you.
that was the best Darren introduction ever.
Stop. Well, I made a joke about that in the intro, but that's the greatness that is Joaquin Phoenix in his acting ability. Because when you're watching that movie, when you're watching that documentary, you're like, is this for real? Like, is he for real? I mean, because it's really compelling. And if you didn't know that it was a hoax, I mean, you really, even knowing it's a hoax, it's really compelling how he pulls off that performance in that film. And to go from something like that to that his almost Dude Lebowski inspired characterization of his character in Inherent Vice to something like this. Now we're almost into, I don't want to say old boy territory, but I'm just comparing like just the level of like him being on a mission and then, just the violence that he's inflicting on these people, and his efficiency in it. I don't know, like it's a lean, mean, and badass film, and it's a really good performance from Joaquin Phoenix. So that's all I'll say about it, because I want to hear what Malthorpe has to say, because I know he dug it too. B, what's your number one?
So my number one is my favorite film from Lost Weekend 9, and that'd be the opening film, Borg McEnroe.
What? Yeah. That's your favorite? Okay. That's a great film.
I really, really like that movie a lot. Again, just going to the performances, the gentleman who played Bjorn Borg, get his name right, Sphere,
What?
Gudnason.
That's wow. You got that perfectly.
First try.
Nice.
Remember when you used to be the dork who always got the pronunciations right?
I know, not this time. It's those.
What happened to you?
Yeah.
You used to be beautiful.
Those names that got the accents over them.
What's that umlaut? What's going on with that umlaut?
But he was really great as Bjorn Borg, and the movie really kind of follows him primarily with him trying to get, I believe it's his fourth straight Wimbledon win. And his trainer played brilliantly, I thought, by Stellan Skarsgård. And I think we forget how great he is because we're so used to seeing him as Dr. Selvig in the MCU most recently. That he's in one of my favorite films, Good Will Hunting, and I forget how great he is as an actor. And he does a great job playing his coach trainer. Really, and you see Borg really kind of almost folding under pressure of winning this fourth Wimbledon to make history. And then we have on the flip side of that, Shia LaBeouf, who plays John McEnroe. And knowing John McEnroe, I don't know if you guys ever watched Tennis. I know you're not real big sports fans.
I've seen some McEnroe.
Yeah, I think he was really able to kind of channel his own interpretation of McEnroe really, really well. I thought Shia LaBeouf, and that dude doesn't.
He's
get
a
lot
great
of credit.
actor.
Yeah, he doesn't get a lot of credit.
Granted, he might be a weirdo or asshole or whatever, and his public persona, whatever. I don't know any truth to those stories or tabloids and shit, but like he's a really good actor.
I think that there is just an essential volatility to Shia LaBeouf. And once he stopped being a child star and started being a madman, he's become like, honestly, I can see his career going in a serious cagey direction where he just plays batshit crazy people. He's going to be in the sequel to remake of Mom and Dad.
Possibly.
But he has a good manic energy about him, and if he finds a role that is tailored to that specific energy, like Cage and Mom and Dad, then he's just going to excel.
And that's why
like
I think he fits
McEnroe.
playing McEnroe in this film. And that's one thing that I really took was just seeing the back and forth between these two characters. And the one aspect that I liked, and I don't know if this is true in real life, was you see on the U.S. side, he has a friend of his that he has to end up facing in the tournament. And once he realizes he has to face him, he cuts off all communication. And his friend is kind of taken aback by that. And it's so interesting seeing them like when they're in the locker room, and he cuts off all communication. He goes out to the match, beats him in the match, comes back, and it's like, hey, no hard feelings. But the dude is like, he's pissed.
He's like, he has hard feelings.
Yeah, he's pissed. But understanding sports and understanding like that mentality, that place that you have to go to get yourself in that mindset to be able to win, like you understand where he has to go. He has to go to that headspace.
Some athletes don't have that capability. That's why you have some that stand out, like your Kobe's and LeBrons, because they have that thing where I gotta focus on this one thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought that just like again, Shia LaBeouf played that brilliantly, and just getting up to the match of Borg and McEnroe, and like I know we talked about this at Lost Weekend, Brad, that the fact that I don't think they have really been able to crack the code as far as being able to film tennis cinematically. But even with that being said, that match was so tense, and you can really feel like that build up to who's going to win that match. I mean,
did you know who was going to win that match? Just
No,
FYI?
I didn't know the history at all, so I was really into it.
Yeah, no, I didn't know. I didn't know the history of that particular match. I mean, of course, I know a little bit about McEnroe, but I didn't know about. Cause I knew McEnroe won Wimbledon, but I didn't know he won.
I thought this was the match where he was going to win. So when he didn't win, I was like, oh.
Yeah, I didn't know Borg actually got that record. And then you hear about the friendship that Borg and McEnroe had after,
and still have
to that day.
Yeah.
And even that scene where they meet up at the airport, and you really see that affection that McEnroe has for Borg. This movie just worked on so many different levels. Now I loved every aspect of this film. It was just really, really good.
I find the argument of like nobody's shot tennis like in a cinematic like
this is just her.
That's what tennis looks like. Tennis looks like that. It's spaced out and it's boring.
You gotta get Michael Bay to shoot your
I'm just saying, mount a GoPro on a tennis ball.
Oh my
God.
That
was my idea.
Hardcore Henry Part 2 tennis.
Oh my God, no thank you. Hard pass.
All right, great pick. I'm surprised that was your favorite movie. That was a great man. Again, Shia LaBeouf is so good. And you know what? I when you were talking about Brian, I was just thinking how perfect an actor Shia is for that persona that he's supposed to be characterizing, because they both have, in their respective fields, they're both skilled. Shia LaBeouf, his may be subjective. His skills may be subjective.
Well, they're also, I think, similar personalities.
That's what I'm saying. But their public persona, or even like they're known to have like these volatile natures, and so I think that was just like the perfect marriage of actor to character, because he does excel in that role. So yeah, good pick. All right, Billy, I'm trying to think what could be your number one.
What could you guess?
Rocksteady Row.
Oh my God,
motherfucker! How did you know?
It's about bikes.
I love bicycles.
There is like 30 minutes of great movie in Rocksteady Row. Guys.
Actually, yeah, I'd agree with that. Actually, I do not want to use my number one pick to go into the 30 minutes of great movie for Rocksteady Row, though. Right. But seriously, we should have that conversation later. No, not really. No, my pick for my number one movie is my favorite movie. It was my favorite movie of last year as well, which is Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead's.
Okay.
I'm so far in the bag for that movie. I really I like the kinds of stories and mythologies that Benson and Moorhead work with, and the way that they take things that feel familiar and turn them into something that feels unfamiliar and new, and use that to explore the subject matter that they're working in. The Endless is an exploration of brotherly love and where they stand with each other on that. And their turn in front of the camera is is impressive. I like that they went out and made a movie on their own, and they said, well, gosh, maybe we just put ourselves in front of the camera because fucking money, right? And we'll go ahead and do it. But I think what they came up with is something that you can watch and think on, even if the movie isn't completely something that is all in for you. I find the subject matter that they're considering to be very rewarding to think about.
It's not like there are BFFs or anything, but they've been on the podcast twice.
Yeah.
And we've met them a couple times in person. And I want to get your take on this. Does it feel like Justin is playing Aaron and Aaron is playing Justin in The Endless? Like, knowing them.
So are they doing like a face-off, like Nick Cage?
Yeah, Billy's nodding his head, right? Like that's what's going on, and I love that.
I think that they get in through. So in the movie, you see Justin and Aaron as Justin and Aaron. It's not Justin and Aaron, but it's Justin and Aaron. It's right. Whatever, fine. You'll fucking figure it out. You see Justin and Aaron argue with each other about the meaning of words. And having interacted with them, I know Aaron and Dave Lawson like to get into just throw down over what the arbitrary definitions of words are and how they're going to lay out the meaning of them, and they clown on each other over it. I think the answer to your question is yes. I do think that they're having a little bit of fun with that.
Yeah, in the Idmon movie, I'm gonna play me as Brian.
Oh, I would love to
Oh
see
my
that.
God.
And then Brian, you
You do
can you
Darren.
imagine
I
Brian
can't do that.
Brian will do me.
Turtle as Disco though?
I can't do it. He's like, I would have to really do some Academy
Dig
Award
deep.
with
You gotta dig deep, baby. You gotta dig deep.
We'll have to find a female director since I'm in this movie and only women
You
can
can
direct
do
women.
what? Oh, well, you at least direct your own self.
Yay! I'll be playing Brad.
I take direction from you all the time. What the are you talking about? Lisa is the #1 female director in my life. What are you talking about? It was so great getting to see The Endless on the big screen.
I actually, I mean, because I had previously seen it just in my house on my television, and I know that I am, I think, very well known for having opinions about being able to watch movies at home and that being an okay thing. But I really do believe in seeing movies on the biggest screen possible.
What the fuck was that?
I know. I was looking everywhere like.
That was
Brad-
Brad
was
trying to
Brad.
laser thoughts into Billy's brain.
You should have seen me introing Mohawk because I talked the shit out of seeing movies on the big screen and how important it was. The church. Yeah. That's the thing I said.
I'm on 1% battery life on my laptop.
Oh no! I gotta plug.
But I like the look of the movie, and I think that it is something that I understand that they're going to have a theatrical release for the movie. So in April, when it hits
Yay.
screens near you, I really do strongly encourage you to go see it in the theater because it's definitely something you're going to want to see as big and as loud as possible.
And this is another film that has a science fiction bent that is like told in like a visual way that you haven't seen before. But this one is done on a low budget, and it's so tremendously creative. The scene with the rope, both times
man.
it pops up, so good.
That's so
every single
unsettling.
time.
That is
Ugh,
so unsettling.
So good.
Smiling Dave Lawson.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. Yep.
All right, Lisa.
Yes.
Let's see. Your #1.
You could totally guess it when I say it. You're gonna be like, of course.
Your #1. Your
Pork pie.
#1.
Yes,
No, I'm saying
Brian
your
knows me.
#1.
Oh,
I was telling you.
I thought you were
#1.
thinking.
No.
Yes,
I
but
don't know what
Brian's
you
right. My #1 is the New Zealand comedy Pork
Yeah,
Pie.
yay.
Also not VF, but I did close my eyes, so I was fine. But when did this movie show? Was this the day one?
This was right before LA 92.
Day 2 first movie.
First
Day
movie
two,
did, yep.
first movie.
This is the left hook sucker punch of that day.
Yes.
Day pork
Hey,
pie.
fun,
LA
fun, fun.
92.
So apparently this was actually a remake of like a classic New Zealand film. I'd be interested to see the original.
Original's called Goodbye Pork Pie.
Yeah.
Stars the son of the director of that film.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And so I'll just read the little synopsis off of IMDb. Pork Pie tracks the escapades of a trio of accidental outlaws as they travel the length of New Zealand in a yellow Mini, protesting conformity and chasing lost love with a posse of cops and a media frenzy hot in their pursuit. Like now it's been so long since I've seen this movie, but it's really funny. There's a chase element. There are hijinks. Dean O'Gorman plays not the main character because it's about a trio, but like the first character. He's kind of a down on his luck guy. He was with the woman of his dreams and somehow he fucked it up, and now he wants her back.
He
but
was a runaway bride, right?
Yeah, he left her with all
he
of
got
her.
cold
Sorry,
feet.
runaway groom. Sorry.
He got cold feet. That's a little bit of a spoiler. But that's like an unspeakable thing to do. That's an unreversible thing to do unless you pull off something extraordinary. And that's kind of the course of this film. On his way, he picks up James Rolliston, that's the actor's name, Luke, who he's fallen into a life of light crime and has accidentally on purpose stolen a car. And so for some reason, I don't remember how John gets in the car. It was hitchhiking, I think.
Yeah, no. He almost gets hit by him. He's
Yes.
walking down the center of the road.
Yes.
The car almost nails him.
And so they end up in this car together, and John doesn't know that it's. And then my laptop just died. John didn't know that it was stolen. Luke, doesn't want to give off that it's stolen, so he's trying to just like be cool about it.
So Luke is fleeing from a gang, right? That he had
Yes.
fallen in with.
So he's on the run, and then along the way,
They pick up an animal rights.
like a cute chick that Luke is kind of into, and then all of a sudden she's along with their escapades, and then she adds like a social media aspect, which kind of accelerates the story along. But to me, it was just so funny and fresh, and
It's
just
like a road
good
movie
ride.
too, right?
Yeah, it's like a journey movie, and with the element of this friendship and where all of the characters end up, really heartwarming.
Yeah.
It's just like a fun time.
Yeah. New Zealand has a history of having a thing for car films. They love car films, and so part of the inspiration for the original picture that this movie is based on, and this one as well, is it being a homage to like chase car movies and chase movies and stuff like that.
And the chases are super silly.
Yeah.
They're not like, I tend to zone out during real car chases. I'm like, just tell me who wins. But this one is really funny and really cute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they got some really good car stunts that they do in this movie too.
There's like the only part where I'm just like, this is just silly, was like the whole part on the train where they're just putting costumes on.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, why is this scene in here?
Though? Like,
it's still adorable.
I felt the same way, Lisa. But then again, like that felt like something like really like 80s and 90s to me. Like that felt like movies I used to watch like back in the day. There'll be something ridiculous like that, and probably back in the day, I probably thought it was ridiculous or whatever. But like seeing that. I had like this nostalgic feel about those types of movies, and like these unlikely group of people on this unlikely adventure who are going to be unlikely friends, like when it's all said and done. Because the ending does, and I think the reason why for me the ending is as heartwarming as it is partly because of that scene, that section on the train where they were being ridiculous, trying on costumes and stuff,
and the idea of. You can make all kinds of mistakes and still end up where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's just a nice message.
Yeah, that's the story of my fucking life.
And that's it's parallel with the In the Fade ending, I think.
Dear Lord.
Oh wow.
That is not the story of my life. Shit, Lisa.
What?
What? You lost me.
I thought that was perfect.
I do not want to be in no fade. Shit. All right, Brad. Your number one.
My number one is You Were Never Really Here, starring Joaquin Phoenix and directed by Lynn Ramsey. And the only thing I would add to what you were saying is that this film is 90 minutes long and it is packed with information that I am dying to revisit so that I have a better understanding of what I'm being told at the start of this film. Because Phoenix's character is, you have an idea he's a veteran, he went through some shit, and he's suffering nightmares of his time overseas, and this story of him trying to retrieve this young girl from a sex slave ring that also involves politicians, and it gets darker and darker and blah, blah, blah. Just the way info is told in that film is terrifying. Lynn Ramsey directed We Need to Talk About Kevin. So she's a master of dread and uncomfortable tension. And you are so wound tight over the course of these 90 minutes that when it finally finishes, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel at the end of that movie. I know that I went through something, but I need that second viewing to truly understand what that experience meant to me as a viewer.
To crystallize it.
It. And it's coming out on April 6th. I think it's actually going to do like a short theatrical run to coincide with the VOD run. So I think we'll be able to see it pretty soon in this area.
Check it out in the theaters. It's gorgeous.
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful movie. Yeah. It's a beautiful looking movie.
And VF.
Yep.
No.
What?
The guy gets shot. And it's not V, it's blood, but you still don't like that stuff.
I still don't like it.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. All right. Great pick. I'm looking forward to seeing that one again, too.
Yeah.
All right. My number one pick of Lost Weekend 9 isn't so much a film. Actually, it's not a film at all. But my favorite thing about this Lost Weekend is my favorite thing about all the Lost Weekends, and that is Andy Garrison. Just getting to hang out with him and just watching him interact with his audience and with his community and be so open and just be Andy. Like he's a special person, and you know his intro as a tennis ball and explaining the dynamics of tennis nomenclature is classic Andy. And you know,
Just when you think he can't top his lobster costume for the lobster.
yeah, he comes back as a tennis ball.
He did like a triple axel as a tennis ball.
Yeah.
What the fuck? How did
And
that happen?
you know,
That's amazing.
Lisa, you hear Lisa always talking about, you know, the arduous task of sitting through all these films and what that's like for you, like emotionally and stuff like that. Because it can be draining. Then you have like the length of time. You're not even accounting for like the film, but just, you know, the hours that you're in that theater. And it's Andy's job to keep everyone on their toes and engaged. And he does so, not just by standing at the opening of at the foot of the auditorium, yelling at the top of his lungs, but by literally engaging with everyone in that theater. And that is so special. And that, I mean, that there would be no Lost Weekend without Andy, without that. And so just looking back on that, that's my favorite thing about the Lost Weekends. And the fact that I had a good time and it was because of him, and that there's going to be some more Lost Weekends to look forward to, is what gives me like the brightest feeling inside when I think about the Lost Weekend. So.
I would be heartbroken if all of a sudden Lost Weekend became so big that now all of a sudden the films are picked by committee. I love the fact that we get a sense of Andy as a person through these films and what he chooses to program. And he really proves that being a programmer, there is an art to it, you know, and there is nuance to it, and just he creates the environment where you just feel so privileged to be there. It's just really awesome.
You know, one hand, I think that because Andy is who he is, and he is who he is within that community and that film club, if it got that big, I think that's one thing that wouldn't happen, that Andy would still program it. But if, on the other hand, if it did, in fact, get so big that it's programmed by a committee, I think because of what Andy's cultivated in Winchester at the Alamo with Film Club 3.0, I think that committee would be a committee of the film community.
Hopefully we'd be on that committee.
3.0. But but that's the thing. Like he's so generous and inclusive. Like we got a month of our own to program what we wanted. You know, like Andy's so inclusive, and that's what makes him special, and that's why he's the center of that film club and that film community in Winchester. And so yeah, Andy's my number one pick for Lost Weekend, for my fistful of Lost Weekend 9.
Just for FYI, I did not know that was an option. If I had known that was an option, I would have also stolen that for all my choices. Andy, one.
I support this, but I still like my choices.
I love you. I'm glad, because without those choices, we wouldn't have gotten to talk about those films. And every film that we all talked about was one on my list. So thank you. So hit us up on social media at ItModcast to let us know if you were at attendance at Lost Weekend 9, let us know what your top 5 films were, or your top 5 moments, or anything, whatever Lost Weekend related.
And if you weren't at Lost Weekend and you've made it through this entire episode,
Yeah.
do yourself a favor and get yourself the Lost Weekend 10. It's usually at the end of September, beginning of October. I don't think the actual dates have dropped yet, but it is, you know, it's unlike any other film festival that I've certainly ever attended. And as much as I love Fantastic Fest, and as much as I yearn to go to Sundance or South by Southwest, which is happening right now as we're speaking, I know, I really want to be there, Darren. This is a unique environment. It is, and, you know, like Lisa was saying, it's like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. 25 movies later.
There's definitely some crouching in a cold shower with your clothes on afterwards.
Yeah.
But you're only paying $35 for those 25 movies.
Somebody did the math. They're like, it's less than $2 per film.
And
So
Steal and a steal. It's Costco style
$35
movie
for
budget.
25 films.
It's nuts.
And Fantastic Fest this year is $520
Plus plane tickets.
plus plane
Plus fucking
tickets.
hotels.
For this year only.
Plus hotel.
For this year only, I just want to point
Whatever,
out. Whatever,
Darren.
Still going. But yeah, Lost Weekend is truly something special. So again, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Alamo Draft House Winchester. Thank you, Film Club 3.0, for being so open with us. And thank you for everyone who came out and spoke with us and conversed with us. It was great seeing our friends there at Colors and Rage. Liz and Jimmy Reed, the Sears were there. Got to see Chris. Lindsay was there. Got to
Ashley.
see Jill, Ashley, and sorry, forgetting people. Megan and
MK.
and MK.
Shara.
Yeah, Chara. Shara, good seeing
Julie,
you.
Andrew.
Did I say Chris Chaka?
Other Brad, Chris
Brad,
Chaka.
yeah,
Everybody's there.
everyone.
Kern.
So thank you. Oh, we got to meet
Kern.
him for the first time.
Yep.
Yeah, so great meeting you. So yeah, that's the cool part about the film festival is that you're discussing these films with these people and meeting new friends.
I think the best part of last weekend was Shara telling me that I'm her son's favorite dork.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
Whatever.
Yeah.
I really appeal to the
You've got-
8-year-old.
She
Yeah.
got that demographic on lock because she's Cia's favorite. C is 8. So and whenever she gets in the car and I'm listening,
She's like,
and
oh,
it's someone
Brad
else-
again.
it's someone else talking, she's like, is Lisa going to talk? I was like, yeah, it's not.
Not if I have anything to
It's
say
not
about
her
it.
turn yet. Dang, you don't want to hit daddy. So yeah, well, you're her favorite too. So you got that demographic on lockdown. You can follow Brian at the Turtle Dork on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at different addresses because he did not lock his name down. So on Twitter, he's the Turtle Dork. On Instagram, he's Turtle Dork 1, and on Facebook, he's Brian William Young. And on Letterboxd, who are you?
The turtle dork. I ask myself that every day.
Every day.
The turtle dork.
And Indie Dork is at
WB Das.
Das.
I said Das because
Das.
I assumed that's how it was going to be said.
Das.
It is
Sorry,
Das.
It's
It's
Das.
Das.
WB Das
It's
on Twitter.
Code switch.
Das got a mean ass. WB Das.
Oh, okay.
All of that is
Instagram and on Facebook.
Are you going to
you're-
spoon him now?
If I'm lucky.
Is there anything you got
keep
going
talking
on
like
you want to
that.
put out there, Billy?
I think we can share this. Is Brad and I are going to go to the Chattanooga Film Fest.
What the f?
I haven't
weekend.
told Darren that.
What?
yet.
Holy shit!
Wait.
told Darren
You
that
would drop
yet.
this shit on air.
That just happened.
B, what the f?
I'm sorry. It just happened.
Hey,
Billy
wait.
just convinced me.
When is it?
When is it, Billy?
April.
That I'm going. How much is it?
I have no idea.
You know what? You're not leaving. Motherfucker, you gonna leave me?
I know. I was gonna tell you.
I had no idea
Leave
that
Brian.
this was news.
Yeah.
Holy
leave me.
shit!
What?
No. They're covering us because of the film school rejects thing.
I can cover myself.
Okay.
What the f? You know what?
No, we can do it.
Lisa can be found at Sideward. Look at Billy's like, I'm sorry. You f***ed it all up, Billy.
That's so uncomfortable right now. I'd like to leave.
You should be.
I'm sweating, literally.
All right. You're out of it, mine, Billy. Just kidding. Wife Dork is at Sidewalk Siren on Twitter, at Sidewalk Siren on Instagram, and at Sidewalk Siren on Letterboxd.
Yes.
Brad Gullickson is at Mouth Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Untapped. And whatever apps he uses, because I don't know, because he doesn't tell me everything. All right. I'm Darren Smith, the Disco Dork, on all social medias. That's going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Go see some movies. Tomb Raider came out today.
Yeah, we
That
rated
joint's
some
the
too.
bomb.
Brian's most anticipated film of 2018.
One of the most, yes.
Alicia Vikander. I mean,
Yes, that's
Don't
She
like
is-
her.
That's my.
She
You know
is.
what? I'm cutting Brad's mic off. He's full of secrets and hate.
I think she's the poor man's Natalie Portman.
Damn, I'm cutting this mic off.
I think Alex Garland would agree. Brought
Oh my-
Oscar Isaac back,
Oh my God.
but upgrade.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Whoa.
that's going to do it for us. Thank you all
Because
for
they look
listening.
the same.
Until next time, what?